Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your founder and CEO of Guide to HR. So founders, are you being the leader that your business needs to scale and grow? This is a great question we're going to dive into. I'm so excited to have Chad Brown on the call. Let's get to it, Brad. Welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Guinevere. I'm excited. I love the title of the podcast. I just have to say that's what caught my eye. That's why I reached out to you and said, "Hey, can we have a conversation?" Because scaling with people, that's my business, and
Yeah.
I love the people side of business. Not many people say that, but that's I do. That's the most fascinating part of business to me is how do people interact with business. So that's part of my introduction is just I love people. I always have. I've grown and sold a couple businesses of my own, learned really hard lessons through a lot of failure. Everything that I teach and work with with my clients now, honestly, comes from my own failure completely. And so I'm a dad of 3 kids that I love, and we adventure a lot together. And celebrating 20 years of marriage with my wife this year. We're going to go to Italy and eat some food and drink some wine and go all over the countryside. And but they are the center of my universe. And then everything else is added onto that, the work that I do. And I get to work with founders and leadership teams in points of transition is what I call them, points of inflection, points when they're saying, we'd really like to grow and scale this thing. I don't know how to do that. And I don't know, like your introduction said, I don't know what it's going to require of me or who do I need to be in order to grow this thing, but I'm determined and committed to do it. And then we get to work together to put those kind of ways of thinking into place that allow a business to scale and grow.
I love that. And a fun fact for the audience, we're both Utah residents, so we get to see each other in person. Well, I can't wait to dive into this. So there are kind of 3 things I'd love to dive into. The first one is this famous myth of, oh, I want to have a good work-life balance. And you and I've talked a little bit about this, and I've had a couple of CEOs that I've worked with that we're really talking about it from an integration perspective. But what's your take on this, and what have you seen has been kind of maybe a stumbling block for founders building their business?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before we hit record, but it's worth saying here, the majority of the clients that I work with that are founders that are working to both grow a business successfully and scale it and be present for a family or a community, something that's outside of their business that also really matters to them. I always describe it to them and they usually nod really big when I describe it this way. So I know it's touching some nerve, which is, it feels like the devil and the angel on the shoulder at times of like, not necessarily that one's good or bad, but just, hey, the business needs your attention, needs everything from you. And you've got this family, you've got these people that depend on you or this community that really needs you. And they're both beckoning towards you. And then there's this experience of where do I spend my time, my focus, and my energy. And that can be a really, it can be a frustrating at the least, but it can be a despairing position at the most. And so I work with founders. You mentioned integration. That's a word that I use a lot, is how do I'm not one person at work and then one person outside of work. That's one of the starting principles that we start with, because that's been a myth that's been out there for a long time, is like, I'm a professional over here and then I'm a person over there. And that creates a dissonance, that creates an inconsistency where we feel like we need to put on a mask. And then ultimately the mask, it creates a lot of other problems down the road. So that's one of the things. Second is, if we're going to talk about balance, most people think about balance as like a scale or a justice scale, right? Yeah. You think about this justice scale where if you put some on one side, the other side goes up, and then you've got to put some on that side to equal them out, to find some sort of equality or balance. And the thing about that is it's completely unrealistic.
Yeah.
You are never going to balance any area of your life, let alone your personal and your business. And if you did, here's the crazy thing. If you did, by chance, you achieved it in a moment, that's as long as it would last.
Yes, that moment
is a moment, because pretty soon without fail, something in the business is going to go awry. It needs your attention, or something in the family or the community is going to go awry and it needs your attention. So what are you're back out of balance. And now you can play this shame game or this like beat yourself up about being out of balance. I think about a different type of balance, which is, I don't know if you ever did this, Guinevere. When I was a kid, I would avoid chores however I possibly could.
That's called procrastination there, Chad.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still a pro at it, by the way. But when my chore was to sweep the kitchen floor, I found myself with the broomstick sitting on my hand with the broom head up in the air and trying to balance that broom head as long as I possibly can to keep it up in the air. And I would time myself and I would keep record, and I was really, really good at it. And this is the type of balance that I invite founders into, or anybody who is finding this struggle between business and personal or anything else, is that this is what it is that when you balance a broom on your hand like that, where do you have to put your gaze? You have to put it at the bristles, at the top. Because if you look at your hand, it's going to fall. You can't keep it up, right? So the top of the broom, those bristles, is the aim. That's getting clear about our goals, our milestones, our rocks. What are we working towards? And keeping our focus on those things. And if we keep our focus on that thing, our hand, in the scenario of the broom, if we look at the broom head, our hand almost automatically moves in the direction it needs to move to keep the balance. Same thing with life. When you're clear on your aim in your business and with your family or your community, whatever it is outside of your business, your movement will almost automatically happen that would work towards or contribute to that aim. But the challenge is that most founders have not gotten clear on what those aims are and specific about what they are and how they would look when they get them, that they're just moving their hand all over. They're looking at their hand. They're looking at the things that are needed in that moment today, the emergency, the to-do list, all of that sort of stuff. And it's completely out of balance and the broom falls. The aim and the vision doesn't work because we've lost sight of it. So it's a different type of balance, but it's a balance that invites us to stay focused on what we want most and let that make our decisions.
I love this context too, because a lot of times I'm talking to founders and CEOs, and it's about, are you working on the right thing at the right time to move the needle? And like, one, the needle is the top of the broom, right? But then knowing that, and then constantly asking yourself, is this how I should be spending my time? I find founders so much like just doing so much tactical stuff, whether it's HR or marketing or sales. Now, of course, a founder is probably going to always be in the sales aspect, trying to build up their clients or customers, with the relationships of investors and so forth. But how you spend that time is as critical as understanding, like, okay, where you're going. Because if you know where you're going, then you're on the right road of how your time is being spent. So I love that concept.
Yeah, there's you started the conversation by asking the question, who do I need to be, or what leader do I need to be? One of those beings is focused. I must be focused in order to grow this thing. There's always going to be another thing to get done.
Yeah,
that's never ending. Anybody listening to this that has grown a business or owns a business knows the list is endless. So you could work till you were dead. So what that requires of you now is how willing am I to focus on where we're going and say no, or, see the forest through the trees, that all of those sayings that we say over and over again. How are we going to stay focused on what's going to be most impactful in this moment with these people?
Yeah, that is so true. I love that. All right, so let's flip the script a little bit here. Let's talk about, you've got the balance. Well, we don't say balance, we got the integration, right? And you're working on your business, and part of your business is about trust. It's trust. You have trust in the people you're bringing on, leaders, employees, people who are going to execute on your business. And then you're building the trust with your investors, your customers, that they're going to get what you're promising them. So we were talking a little bit about, there's two types of trust, and I'd love to dive in a little bit more and share with our audience what that is.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I would actually say, rather than trust being a part of your business, I would say your business is built on trust or the lack of
Yeah.
trust. And it's a foundational piece that determines the stability of it. And if the trust doesn't exist, sure, you can grow, but it's going to be a pretty unstable growth.
Mm-hmm.
So why not shore up that foundation as much as you possibly can? Now, that takes us to a deeper level, which is it's not just enough to talk about trust or to go for or to create trust. There are a couple of types of trust. One of them is devastating to a team, and the other one is exactly what a team needs to scale. So the first one is I call them immature trust and mature trust. So immature trust is actually the most common, I would say, my experience, I wouldn't say this as a fact or whatever, but my experience is when most people talk about trust, they're talking about immature trust, which is, I trust you, Guinevere, so I don't have to pay attention to you.
Ooh,
Meaning,
yeah.
I trust you so much. Look how honorable I am in my trust, and look how much I think of you. So I don't even have to pay attention to what you're up to because I trust you're going to do what you're going to do,
Yeah.
and you're going to do the right thing, right? And that's immature trust because, like Jordan Peterson says, I love this quote. Jordan Peterson says, we all have snakes in us, meaning we all are capable of compromising our relationships or compromising our trust at any moment. And we do, on
Mm-hmm.
accident, on purpose, on just out of function of time and focus and all of that sort of stuff. We have breakdowns. We're
Yeah.
humans,
Yeah.
right? And so I love that visual first of like all of us have snakes in us. We have the ability to betray each other. And so immature trust is me believing that would never happen with you. That's when we get surprised. Have you ever sat down with a founder? I'm sure you have. Have you ever sat down with a founder and they're just dumbfounded? They just can't believe that this person had betrayed their company in some way or their
Yeah.
team. And it's like, okay. And they always tout it off like, well, I really trusted them. Well, okay, you did, but in an immature way. And I don't mean that derogatory.
Yeah.
I don't mean to put anybody down by that word of immature. It just means beginning. It just means early, right? That's how we learn to trust. Mature trust is trusting somebody, knowing that they can betray you at any moment, whether it's conscious or unconscious, and paying attention to what they're producing that would give you the signs of whether or not they're going to be successful or not. And then be willing to interrupt any conversations or any action that doesn't seem to be going towards the aim. That's mature trust. So it's a lot of people in the business world talk about this in the context of trust and verify, trust and
Mm-hmm.
verify,
Yeah.
right? Which is a
Yeah.
great principle. However, I think it's a simultaneous, I think it happens together. I think it is the same thing. If I truly trust you, I'm interested in your success, my success, and our success together. So I'm going to keep checking in. I'm going to pay close attention to make sure we're moving in the direction we said we're committed to.
Yeah. I call the immature trust on my side is blind trust.
Yeah,
I trust you, and then I'm going to just go blind because I don't have the capacity or the desire or whatever the reason
that's
might
right.
be to do what you're saying, which is more the mature trust and really being partnering with the individuals in your space, in your world.
Yeah, you mentioned capacity. That's an interesting one because think about anybody listening to this, think about the times when you haven't paid attention to somebody and they betrayed you in your business or otherwise. How much time, energy, and focus did that cost you, that betrayal?
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's short-term gain, this blind trust that you're talking about, or I call immature trust. It's short-term gain, long-term pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
That's so
other, the
true.
opposite, the mature trust is short-term pain because it's paying attention. It costs you time, energy, and focus, but long-term gain because when it really matters, when they're out there with your clients, when they're a steward over a very vital piece of your business, then that doesn't get messed up because you were paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's such good words of wisdom and can be used in so many different areas. I mean, just in human resources, when you're talking about looking at your onboarding and your new hires and making sure that they're being set up correctly, that is building that maturity trust, right? It's not just like, oh, I hired you, you interviewed well, I hired you, you must be able to do the job, now go do it. Like you actually spend the time to get them onboarded and make sure that the relationships are being built with the right people. They have access to the right things so that they can be successful. Why? Because you don't want to have to go through it all over again in 6 months, because like you said, it's costly, it's time, like so much time is being spent on it. So when you said that, that just kind of triggered like, yeah, that's exactly how many times do we see those kinds of scenarios in our decision-making process every day?
Every day, every team that I work with is working to undo the damage that some sort of betrayal or blind trust had created.
Yeah.
And it's not a problem, it's recoverable, but that's resources spent, right? So and ultimately what I want to say is this is the greatest way to care for somebody. If you really want to care for people, which I kind of dig caring for people, if you really want to care for people, this is the way to do it, because
Yeah.
they're going to be more successful. You're going to be more successful, and then you can enjoy the success together.
Exactly. And that then equates to your leaders, your employees being engaged, empowered, and actually being able to like be your spokesperson, make decisions that are going to be impactful to your business without you having to get involved with every little decision. Right. I don't need to know if it's a blue pen or a black pen, just sign it already. Right. Like simple, obviously example, but just like another way of thinking about it. So we opened it up as, are you being the founder you need to scale your business? So in this regards, what are some ways that a founder can start thinking about and changing their behavior to be more of a mature, trusting partner?
Well, you already named some of them so easily. I could tell it came to you so naturally. Is like you talked about an onboarding period. Anytime you bring a new team member on, in order to get cleared and in order to pay attention to them, they need some sort of period where they're being onboarded. You have regular check-ins. And listen, check-ins aren't enough. You have to be willing to ask the challenging questions and be willing to engage the challenging conversations. So if something's missing, if something doesn't look quite right, or to be willing to say it in that moment, hey, this doesn't seem to be aligned, or we didn't meet this onboarding goal, or whatever it is that comes up, you have to be willing to have those conversations right then. You have to interrupt it, because it doesn't make sure you could pay attention to it and then see it and then just keep going. And that's not going to get it done. You have to be willing to take the next step, which is actually interrupt the thing that's not working and investigate it. Not punitively, not like anybody's in trouble, but just like, this is interesting. I wonder what we might be missing here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I think there's a little bit of like, listen to your instinct too. Yeah. Sometimes there's
Yes.
that like, something doesn't feel right here. I need to check in and not be like, I don't have time. I got to deal with this other fire. And then, you go deal with that other fire that might be like a kitchen fire. And all of a sudden you turn around and that instinct is now a forest fire that's taking 10 months to, or 10 weeks to like clean out. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, trusting in your gut. So, continuing on the theme of being the founder that you need to be in order to scale your business, what are some of the critical beliefs that you have found through your interactions with your clients and other individuals that founders have that are actually killing their capability of scaling and growing their business?
Yeah, I did some work to compile some of these beliefs. So I have 5 founder beliefs that kill scalability. And I appreciate you teeing it up so beautifully that way. We've actually been talking about a couple of them, so it's very, very
Yeah.
pertinent. And I'd be happy to share that PDF with you and any other listeners. And
It'll be in the link, listeners.
yeah, the cool thing about this PDF is that it names the belief, but then it also it walks you through how to identify if you are engaged in the belief, and then what you can do to start to change the belief, what you can do to start to mold the belief to something that's much more useful or will contribute to success, right? So, like the one that we've been talking about already is a belief of time scarcity. I don't have enough time to pay attention to the important things because I've got that fire burning over there and I've got that fire burning over there. And this idea of time scarcity is a product of lack of focus. I believe that. And some people may hear that and say, I don't know about that. Of course, we have a finite amount of time, but if you are laser focused, it will become very clear the things that need to be addressed and the fires that can burn. And I see it over and over and over again with my clients. And they're always amazed when they can finally start to let things burn that don't need the focus now. They're so excited to tell me about it. So that's one of them. I'm not going to go into that.
And let me add a little bit more to that, because I think there's also a scenario where you let the fire burn as a founder because that's not where you founder need to spend your time.
That's right.
However, you have a team that either you already have in place, or maybe it's time to get in place, that will go and firefight for you. And they're the ones that's the fire that they need to focus on, but you don't need to focus on.
This is so crazy because you haven't read my list.
I haven't read it. No, is this going to go to number two?
Okay. The number two, I call the solo syndrome.
I swear I did not cue him up, audience. I swear.
Number two is called the solo syndrome. This is the attitude. It usually shows up like no one can do it as well as I can. Nobody can do it as well as I can. If that is true in your organization, you really need to revamp your hiring. I always tell founders, hire people that scare the hell out of you to work with.
I say smarter, that are smarter than you.
Sure. Yeah. But if you're interviewing somebody and you get that little butterfly in your stomach, like, I don't know if I can keep up with this person. That's the person you need in their realm of expertise. So solo syndrome is the second one. The third one is avoiding feedback. That one's plain and simple. I don't need to talk much about it. But a lot of founders don't want to see the results that are there because they make a lot of meaning about it. And I say, let go of the meaning you're making about it and see the feedback. And that one's a pretty common one. The tool shows up as, I pay people, so why don't they just do their job?
Oh, if I had every penny of when I heard that one, right?
That's right. That's right. I call that the tool belief because that's when you want to use human beings as tools. You want to simplify them to a single transaction of money for labor or money for intelligence or whatever it is the role is. And you just can't do that. Human beings can't be boiled down to a single transaction.
I feel like COVID really helped kind of like manage through some of those thought processes too. Like during COVID, it was like very obvious that we're all human beings. And then coming back to work, there was still this, we're all human beings and we're not going to leave our baggage at the door to get to work and do the job. Right. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the last one is, I call it the nice gal or guy syndrome. If I'm nice enough to people, if I am that nice person, they will do for me what I need them to do. They will grow my business. And that's just not the case. And I make a distinction between nice and kind, which I don't think we have the time to go into here, but that's a little teaser. People can check that out. I encourage my founders to be kind founders, not nice founders. And that's been an important and powerful distinction for them.
I love that. And I also think too, some of my experience has been a lot of founders, like, this is their baby, this is their blood, sweat, tears. This is their idea. Of course, they're going to work a lot harder and a lot longer than anyone else that's coming on board. And then there's this like thought process I see where it's like, well, I need them to be loyal and stay with me. And I'm like, okay, but what are you doing that they feel like you're loyal to them? There's so many things that employers do that like basically make people feel like, well, they don't care about me. I'm just a number. I'm just a cog in the wheel. Why do you think you're going to get my loyalty when you're not treating me the same way?
Yeah.
And I find that very fascinating too.
Yeah, the way that I work with founders on that, it is so interesting. And it's like this age-old dynamic between founder and team, right? And what's interesting is I have so many clients that I've worked with where I think some of their people, especially on the executive team, care just as much about the company as the founder does. They're just as much on the vision and the aim as the founder is. And here's what makes the difference. Here's what I've observed that makes a difference. And here's what I teach my clients to do is identify each individual's vision for their life. Why are they doing this? What's the purpose of the career? Why do they love it? Where's it going? How can they progress? And then how can the company contribute to their personal vision?
Mm-hmm.
And if you will draw that direct line with each person on your team, the likelihood of them being sticky and fighting for your vision is so much higher because they explicitly see how the company achieving its goals and vision contributes directly to them achieving their goals and vision for their life. But that requires you to slow down just a little and get interested in what people want and what they dream
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
And when you do that and you connect it to what you guys are up to in the company, loyalty goes through the roof.
Absolutely. I love that thread. Well, as we do wrap up, unfortunately, I feel like you and I could talk for hours here. What is a last tidbit, trick, tip, thought process you'd like to share with the audience as we wrap up today?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned vision and aim a couple of times. I work a lot in vision in a couple of time segments, which is a year to 18 months, I think is the most powerful vision aim sort of. You can have 5-year plans, but those are so far out.
Yeah,
But then you're going to
especially in
break that
today's
down.
world.
Yeah,
Things
and
are
then you're going to
changing
break
so
that down.
quickly.
So 12 months, 18 months feels really tangible. So I work in
Mhm.
that realm, and then I work in quarterly. What are the things that we need to accomplish? What are the 2 to 3 things that are going to move the needle towards that 12 to 18-month vision? And the question I'm asking myself every single day is, and this is the tip or trick, the question I'm asking myself every single day is, would next year Chad be doing this? Every time I'm doing a task, every time I'm considering signing a contract with a potential client, I ask myself, would next year Chad do this? And then that makes my decision. So I'm putting myself, it comes back to that being that you started the
Yeah.
conversation with. Am I being the guy that I'm committed to becoming next year right now and making those decisions? And if I do, then I'm well on my way. If I don't, if I betray myself or betray next year Chad, then I'm staying stuck. That's what people call as stuck or hitting a ceiling.
Yeah, that is great thought process there. And I hope everyone listening adds that into their daily thought process. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, Chad, for joining me today and having this wonderful conversation. For the listeners out there, I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world when you're listening. Don't forget to hit the follow sign and check us out next week when we have our next podcast. And we'll see you then. Thanks so much.
Thank you.